East Timor, the U.S. applies economic pressure on the government of Indonesia.
I think you'll see a development here in the next couple of days.
The E. coli outbreak in upstate New York on pace to become the worst in U.S. history.
We are doing everything to be able to find that this is not the case that happens ever again in a fairgrounds in this state of New York.
And the great-grandmother in Britain whose secret is now out.
Not to make money, but to help prevent the defeat of a new system.
A Soviet spy revealed.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News, reported by John Siegenthaler.
Good evening, everyone. We begin tonight with the tense situation in the troubled Indonesian province of East Timor. A growing number of world leaders condemned Indonesia today for the violence of recent days and demanded that it stop. It was the topic at today's meeting of the United Nations Security Council, where U.S. Ambassador Richard Holbrooke and others called on Indonesia to permit an international peacekeeping force to restore order. Indonesia is refusing for now. Our coverage begins with NBC's Ned Colt in the Indonesian capital.
Flak jackets and a cordon of troops providing protection. A tour of the remains of East Timor's provincial capital by UN ambassadors. Today, it's almost a ghost town, looted and burned. Most of those who live here have fled their homes to escape gangs of militia like these in the truck. In the past week, they've attacked pro-independence Timorese, driving tens of thousands from their homes.
There are people, of course, who have been killed and wounded. They're without food in the hills in the back of East Timor. The Indonesian government is doing nothing about that.
They visited the besieged UN compound in Dili, meeting with staff who refused to pull out, the UN workers intent on protecting the hundreds of refugees sheltered there. Today, the compound was ringed by barbed wire and heavily armed troops. Only yesterday, the militia broke in, terrorizing those inside. Please don't go, cries this mother. Don't leave the people of East Timor. We live in so much terror. As refugees flee East Timor, they're bringing with them harrowing reports of terror. One aid worker says his wife saw countless dead, victims of the violence.
You're talking the size of a whole school building, which used to be used as a detainee detention centre for political prisoners, was chock-a-block full of dead bodies right up to the roof.
The chaos in stories may have had an impact on Indonesia's top military chief. Only yesterday, General Wiranto rejected the deployment of a UN peacekeeping force here. He's now hinting at a change of heart.
The offer of security cooperation must be considered as an option by the Indonesian government.
But in Jakarta, there are conflicting views on foreign intervention. Every day now, there are demonstrations. This one outside the Australian embassy. They're opposed to a peacekeeping force. While Indonesia may now be more seriously considering the deployment of peacekeepers, international pressure on the government will continue to get the troops in as soon as possible. Ned Colt, NBC News, Jakarta.
Some of that pressure came from President Clinton today. He raised the stakes by hitting the Indonesians in their pocketbooks. NBC's John Palmer is traveling with the president.
On the eve of the Asian Economic Summit, President Clinton turned up the heat on Indonesia by announcing he is suspending U.S. military sales to Indonesia, and today he had this additional warning.
They must allow an international force to help restore security. We are ready to support an effort led by Australia to mobilize a multinational force to help to bring security to East Timor under UN auspices.
A series of street demonstrations and marches here in New Zealand have urged all the leaders attending the summit to make ending the violence in East Timor a top priority.
APEC leaders cannot pretend that they can lock up themselves in a hotel room and talk only about trade statistics and forget the extraordinary human problems in the region.
Much attention has been focused on the meeting between President Clinton and Chinese President Jiang Zemin after months of strained relations between the two countries. Tension that reached critical levels earlier this year following the mistaken bombing of the Chinese embassy in Belgrade and American accusations that China has been stealing secrets from the U.S. nuclear laboratory at Los Alamos, New Mexico. U.S. officials described the hour-long meeting between the two presidents as friendly, and they agreed to resume negotiations immediately, on China's effort to join the World Trade Organization. But they made no progress on narrowing differences over Taiwan, with Zhang saying China would not rule out the use of force to stop any move toward Taiwanese independence or foreign intervention.
It is clear that these are our two leaders who, after 6.5 years, have learned to deal with each other through good times and bad. And as a result, I would consider the relationship between our countries now back on track.
These Asian-Pacific summits were designed to deal exclusively with economic matters, but foreign policy issues such as the current unrest in East Timor always seem to intrude, forcing these summits to assume a much broader agenda. John Palmer, NBC News, with the President in New Zealand.
Which brings us now to these questions. Where is APEC headed, and how important are these summits to the world economy? More on that from NBC's Campbell Brown.
The power of the Asian-Pacific economies. That's what led to APEC's creation 10 years ago. The recognition these countries were driving global growth, their manufacturing, their products. The 21 APEC members now account for 45% of the world's economy. President Clinton hosted the very first APEC summit in Seattle. It was hailed as a promising beginning. And despite photo ops like these, APEC has aimed to be more than a glorified gabfest for foreign leaders.
What APEC and the leadership of the United States has done is create the pressure and momentum to keep markets open, to keep a free flow of goods and services and ideas.
But not free enough for some American companies still looking for a more level playing field. Over the last 2 years, APEC has not made much headway for 3 reasons. The Asian financial crisis. It was a setback that dampened enthusiasm for new trade initiatives. Japanese protectionism. Japan resisting more American imports. U.S. politics. Congress has denied the president so-called negotiating authority, the power to make firm trade deals. And now, with some of the Asian countries once again on the rebound, many economists say it's time for APEC to act.
If APEC failed to reach agreement on the trade issues in Auckland, it would be a huge setback for the world economy.
And APEC is only the first step. A new round of trade talks where the real negotiating will be done is scheduled for later this year in Seattle. Talks that would be meaningless without progress in New Zealand in the coming days. Campbell Brown, NBC News, Washington.
And a footnote on this presidential journey. It turns out that Mr. Clinton has logged more than 400,000 miles traveling overseas, making him the most widely traveled president in history. His first foreign trip as president was to Vancouver, Canada, about 3 months after he took office. Since then, President Clinton's excursions have taken him to 58 countries and territories on 6 continents, almost as many overseas trips as George Bush and Ronald Reagan combined. Now, White House officials are already talking about where Mr. Clinton will go in the year 2000. One place reportedly on the list is Vietnam. When NBC Nightly News continues in a moment, the worsening E. coli problem in New York and the emerging one in Illinois. And later in Focus, disappearing acts at small-town airports. Why is it happening?
7,000 times a day, 685 times an hour. Once every 6 seconds, a GM owner puts their stamp of approval on the quality of our cars and trucks by coming back to buy another GM. It's the highest loyalty of any company in the industry. And to us, the highest compliment.
Every kid knows, if you want to make the big leagues, you better eat your Wheaties. And every dad should know, whole grain Wheaties may help prevent cancer. Numerous studies confirm a low-fat diet rich in whole grain foods like Wheaties may reduce the risk of certain cancers. So when he does make the big leagues, you'll be in the front row. 100% whole grain Wheaties, a champion in the fight against cancer.
What should you do if you're having a heart attack? First, call an ambulance, then take Bayer aspirin. Now Bayer may help stop you from dying when taken during a heart attack. Talk to your doctor now. Bayer, powerful pain relief and so much more.
Where will you be when your children find their life's passion. Your dreams change. So have we. Now Dean Witter and Morgan Stanley have joined to provide a world of investment advice on a personal level. The world will change, but at Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, we will always measure success, one investor at a time.
In the Pacific Northwest, the Midwest, and the East, health alerts because of separate outbreaks of E. coli contamination. This has been a taxing week for the nation's public health system. The latest now from NBC's Stan Bernard.
Well number 6 in this now empty fairground appears to be the source of what could become the worst outbreak of E. coli bacteria in America. This was the site of a recent county fair in upstate Malta, New York. Contaminated rainwater from a cow barn is believed to have gotten into the well. So far, there have been 2 deaths.
All right, what we're going to do is get another one from well number 8.
This week, investigators from the Center for Disease Control checked all the wells on the farm. 60 patients are hospitalized, including children who are receiving kidney treatments.
We have 11 children, 9 in serious condition, being dialyzed, 2 in fair condition, between the ages of 15 months and 10 years.
1 child was sent home this afternoon. Near Springfield, Illinois, another outbreak of E. coli. Health officials are trying to reach 1,800 people who attended a Labor Day weekend party. 7 people had been hospitalized, and at least 15 others are ill from bacterial infection. At Battleground Lake in Washington State, a lake that has been linked to an E. coli outbreak that has sickened at least 30 people has been closed until next spring. Health authorities believe it may take that long to find the source of the problem. In New York City, a different illness, St. Louis encephalitis, resulting from mosquito bites. There are 6 confirmed cases, including 3 deaths, and 62 possible cases. For the next 4 weeks, the entire city is being sprayed with the insecticide malathion at pre-dawn and at dusk, and some New Yorkers are being urged to exercise caution.
Now, it would be prudent for an individual with a chronic respiratory problem be